Engineering, and today we're going to talk about our Big 10 chassis. We make these chassis to fit a lot of the various classic trucks, 48 to 56 and all the way up through 60 Ford trucks, and the early 47 to 54 Chevys, and the later 55 through 59 Chevys. Now, as you notice, you look at this chassis and it is so much bigger, wider and taller than a stock chassis, and we just had a different idea about that. The standard chassis manufacturer starts with a layout that is a duplication of the stock chassis with a 34-inch wide rail, 6 inches tall. And when we start with fabricated sections that are 10 inches tall, which is where we came up with the name Big 10. Now, although this looks crazy huge, when you put a body on here, whether it's a Ford with running boards or a Chevy, or the later Chevys and Fords that don't have the running boards, when the body sits on the chassis and fits down over it, the rocker, the bottom of the rocker, will be about a quarter to a half an inch below the bottom of the chassis. So none of this is visible and none of this hangs down below the body. When we try to build these Big 10 chassis as complete as possible to make the installation and the build of your project as easy as it can be. So starting from the very front, they include all of the bumper mounts, and there are some choices to modify bumper mounts, pull them back, drop them, and fit them to different bodies. The core support mounts are in place. They all include our wide ride IFS. Motor mounts are in place for the motor you tell us you want to run. Trans mounts are in place. The cab mounts and everything to fit the cab in place are included. The rear cab mounts, sometimes we modify the rear cab mounts. The Fords typically have a shackle assembly, and we replace that with a solid bushing to keep the cab more stable. And all of the bed mounts required to fit the bed in, and the rear bumpers are in place. Now, as you look at these two center bed mounts, they're raised up off of the chassis, and that's to raise the bed floor to clear this high kit. Now, this is what's called an underslung chassis, where we have one beam that runs under the rear axle and one over the top to bridge it, to make it strong. This is lighter and stronger and allows us more motion room for the rear axle. But this does require you to raise the bed floor, not the whole bed box, but just the bed floor. Now, when we talk about raising the bed floor, again, we're not talking about raising the bed box in relation to the cab or the chassis, just the floor itself. Now, this truck that we're building has a custom built floor, but if you're using a stock wood or metal floor, you would just raise the floor in relation to the front and side panels. When you look in, it looks pretty stock. The only place it's really visible is when you open the tailgate, and you can see the riser panel we have in here to raise the bed floor. So other than raising the bed floor, depending on the year and make of your truck, there's a couple other things that will need to be done. Now, on the rear cab mounts, a lot of these trucks had dog bones or shackles in the rear, and that allowed the cab to flex around because the chassis was flexing. But since our chassis don't flex, we want to hold the cab still, and this makes the doors shut better, it makes the hood fit better, it gets that cab to bed alignment nice and squared up, and it doesn't change. So we replace the dog bones or shackles with a rubber bushing style mount. And if that's required on your cab, we provide you all of the mount plates and adapters to do that. At the back of our chassis, the rear output rails are 42 inches wide, and that width is one of the things that helps make it very stable. But some of the cabs, the little notch they have in the back of it isn't quite wide enough. So you may have to do a little sheet metal work there to widen that opening to get the cab to fit over. On like 55 to 59 Chevys, they have a big step in when you open the door. That needs to be moved out about 2 inches per side. But again, we provide you with the new step plates and the new step risers and some little angle pieces, formed up sheet metal that'll help you get that modification done. We're really trying to help to make sure that you can get the truck built and you get it on the road and start enjoying it. So any of these little extra pieces that you need to be in your possession to get the cab and the body and the motor and trans in there, we try to provide those for you. Now we're going to go over some of the specific features of a Big 10 chassis. All No Limit Big Ten chassis comes with all the brake lines plumbed. This shows the standard 8-inch dual diaphragm booster and master cylinder. Immediately from the master cylinder, we plumb over to the valve assembly, which is the residual check valves and proportioning valves that are pre-mounted to the chassis. We machine our own bulkhead pass through here for the front line, which is pre-plumbed forward through a T-block and splits to either side of the front cross member. At each termination point, we use a stainless bulkhead fitting to pass through the front rail to give us a nice -3 outlet for the front hose. Now, this chassis has our standard front rotor, which is a 12-inch drilled slotted rotor, and this has the upgraded Wilwood D52 caliper. When this is finished off, it'll have a braided stainless flex line that runs from the bulkhead fitting out around the coilover and plumbed into the back side of the caliper. We ship a chassis with those parts loose, just in case they make sure they arrive safe. To the back, there's a hard line that comes out of the rear residual valve that runs back to the X member through the chassis to our rear split block. This is a machine billet block that we make. Notice it has a bleed port to make bleeding the brakes easier. And from the split block, we go to Teflon lined braided stainless hoses that run through the trailing arms, exit the trailing arms at the rear, and the hoses fish through, it comes out and connect to the rear. This chassis has a 12.19 4-piston caliper brake upgrade in the rear, and also separately we would ship the fittings that connect the rear hose to the caliper. This is a huge time saver in the building department, since you don't have to use up any of your time and energy to plumb the chassis. It's already done for you. We pressure test them. We know it's 100%. Fuel tanks are an option on Big Ten chassis. We can build them to be either for carbureted assemblies or for fuel injection. And fuel line plumbing is also an option. Now, to get the fuel safely to the rear, if you look down inside there, you can see the single line sticking out where we use a compression adapter to a -6AN. That line is pre-bent and fitted to run inside the lower rail of the chassis, so it is completely protected, and you can see it here exiting the lower rail, and it's formed up to the underside of the chassis. That plumbing then continues forward, pre-formed through the chassis, tucks in here to the outer rail. It's all segmented so it can be removed behind the battery box mount. And to the front edge of the X, here you can see that there are 2 ports in the chassis for fuel injected for return lines. This is a carbureted chassis single line, so it exits right here. This is a -6AN, so from here at this point you would run a flex line up to the fuel rail or carburetor. If we do a EFI system, it's just 2 lines like this. There would be 2 -6 bulkheads. We can do 1/2-inch line on request. The standard lines are 3/8. All Big Ten chassis come standard with our wide ride IFS, and now all of them include truss plate style motor mounts, which add additional strength to the chassis and make motor mount installation easier. You'll notice in the back that trans mount's also in place. That's a bolt-in removable and adjustable plate. Standard suspensions include a 5-inch stroke billet adjustable RideTech shock, and we can upgrade to shock waves or triple adjustables. Again, this has our standard 12-inch drilled and slotted brake in the front. This is upgraded with a Wilwood D52 4-piston caliper. Sway bar is standard. Power rack is standard. The adjustment in the front suspension uses a rotating and sliding cam, which makes the alignment very, very easy. You can check our alignment footage to see how that's done. The power racks are a standard Ford unit using 3/4 36 spline for the input. This is one of the features that helps to deliver the best handling and ride available for your classic truck. Now, all of our No Limit Big Ten chassis include a heavy-duty roundback 9-inch housing and 31 spline axles. You have your choice of bolt patterns, whether it be 4.5, 4 3/4, 5-on-5, or 5.5. Third members are optional, and we can build anything you want. Nodular housings, billet housings, any type of posi units, any gear ratio, any yoke. Since it's an option, it's hard to quote until you let us know exactly what you want, and we can help you with a decision based on the motor, trans, and tire size. The suspension that we use is a trailing arm design. And we start up at the front here. We use a forged monster ball that we have made. This has a Delrun liner, so it's nice and smooth and doesn't rattle. They're fully greasable. The grease zerk is on the bottom side. And you notice that the two trailing arms converge in the center. This pushes or pulls during braking and acceleration from the center of the chassis, which is much smoother than pushing from the outside. Keeps the vehicle very tractable. These mount to the rear housings with a simple big U-bolt and mount flange. And that brings us to our actual heart of the rear suspension, which is our rocker assembly and coilover shock. Now, we use a standard RideTech 5-inch stroke coilover. The front mount is adjustable. The pivoting point is this big billet rocker block here, which has two A6 wheel bearings in it. Can take about 4,000 pounds of direct load. The billet rocker, and then the uplink, which connects the rocker to the housing. Now I'm going to show you how this moves. Even though there's no spring, there's still pretty good load from the gas charge in the shock. But you can see as the rear axle moves up and down, we have nice, smooth, controlled motion. The rocker has a 1.6 ratio, so with a 5-inch stroke coilover, we can have 8 inches of actual suspension travel at the rear axle. That helps to make the truck drive and ride handle better, smoother, cleaner. The cool thing about a system like this is that the shock squish at ride height can be set independently of the ride height itself. You would adjust the spring tension of the coilover to have the shock sit at 50% travel, not worrying about the ride height of the vehicle. Once you have that squared away, you can move back here to the uplink, and this can be adjusted, and there are different lengths of center links here to get the ride height you want. So ride height adjustment becomes independent of the shock squish adjustment, which allows you to perfectly tune the rear suspension. Our lateral locator is a very simple panhard rod, but it's nice and long, mounting very low below the axle center line, with an adjustable mount on the frame side, so you can kind of do your best to keep it level at a ride height. And that's how we do the rear suspensions on Big Ten chassis. Now, all these features in a Big Ten chassis, the real question is it going to give you the ride quality that you want, the feeling that you're after, the performance, the handling? And we wanted to be able to prove that. So when we started building Big Ten chassis, we set out and built a display vehicle. A lot of you will remember the Silver Bullet F100. We took it out to some Good Guys events when it was just very naked. It was just a cab with no doors and a couple bedsides and a core support. And we started running the Good Guys Autocross, and it was dominant right from the beginning. But we got a lot of flack from the thing not being a real truck. So we built it into a full truck. Doors, fenders, everything to cover up the chassis, which was clearly what we were trying to show off. And we started taking it to more events. And it started winning more and more and more. And we started driving it longer distances. It was one of the first really fast trucks to compete in Optima. It won the Good Guys truck class national championship 2 years in a row. We took the Silver Bullet to the first truck and throwdown, and we won that. And really what we got out of it was the platform was so solid that it was easy to tune the suspension, it was easy to align it, it was easy and fun to drive. The doors stayed in alignment because the chassis wasn't flexing. You'd hit potholes and bumps in the road, and the suspension would do the work instead of the cab shifting and the chassis flexing. It made the ride inside the cab even quieter because the sheet metal wasn't flexing around. Everything about it was just a better experience than a modified stock or some other chassis. It made us even happier for all the work we put into this. All of the design and effort to build just a superior platform for your classic truck paid off. And we want you guys to experience that and just build something that you're proud of. The rides and handles fantastic. So if you're thinking about buying a chassis, think about checking out our No Limit Big Ten.